AdamEDU is the leading studio monitor manufacturer since 1999, with solutions for studios of every size, shape, and budget. Our German-engineered monitors are the final word in every decision made in a recording studio. The introduction of our T-Series has us talking to a new segment of customers eager to find a career path in the audio industry. These conversations have led us to launch a new initiative we call AdamEDU. AdamEDU is a monthly collaboration between AdamEDU, leading recording programs, and the actual professionals defining the diverse career paths available to those with an education in audio engineering. Each monthly event covers specific topics such as audio post-production, ADR, music sync licensing and production, independent engineering, product development, marketing and sales, and the list continues to grow. AdamEDU events occur on campus with students having the opportunity to audition Adam monitors, as well as a panel of industry professionals taking questions on the topic of the month. What follows is an AdamEDU event that was held at the USC Thornton School of Music on the popular topic of music sync licensing. Enjoy.
Thanks for coming out, guys. Really appreciate it. Hope you learned some great things tonight. These are 4 superstars in the industry. They're all based here in LA as well. So they're good people to, shake their hand and maybe see what kind of information you can absorb from them possibly afterwards as well. So starting from left to right, Clark Germain here. Matt Kajcienski. Kristian Nord. And Malte Hagemeister.
Us being at a school where y'all are interested in doing what they do, I think one of the most compelling things is to talk about how you got to where you are, where you got your start. And why don't we just start on the end with Malte and work our way here?
Yeah, for me it started with a band, early 20s. I was 21. And for the next years, I found myself on tour, playing hundreds of gigs and with a record contract, and being successful enough to keep it going, not successful enough to make a fortune. But I keep saying that was my education. Like, I walked through the campus, I'm like, that looks like fun, I would love to do that, but I never did that. I never went to university. So I think a lot of the connections I made in those days, to the industry, to other artists, and I learned a lot, studio work, and then I just went on to scoring some commercials. More artist work, went over here and started the company and the band with him. That's like in a nutshell, But it came all from being an artist and being a live musician.
Yeah, I mean, my career path is kind of similar. I had a band, got a record deal right out of school. We played the same festivals, a lot of them. And then I started writing and producing for other artists. And then I wrote a couple of songs for the sister of Sarah Brightman. And Sarah heard the tracks and wanted to work with me. So I started to work with her and had quite some success with her. And then got involved in the development and the production of a band called Tokyo Hotel, which worked very well too. And then I moved over to the States. Just a few
golden records and just a few platinum records.
I was very fortunate. And then here I started doing music on picture, music for advertising, and learned the business and learned that it's a very different business where you have to be much quicker. And and then he came over when I was here 5 years, I think, and we hit it off right away, started working on records and on commercials, and ever since we did pretty much everything together,
Uplifting,
you change reality when I'm with you.
liberating,
Gravity.
My name is Hayward Nishioka, and I'm 74 years old. I don't feel like it, but I am.
How about you, Matty?
Well, so I come from a pretty hardcore conservatory background, and I knew nothing about commercials or how to get into it. So this is a classic kind of was so green, I just kind of went for it story. Across from my school was ABC News, and
What school was that?
Juilliard. And so after I graduated, I was starting to make relationships in commercials at that point in New York, and went across the street and I saw a banner for World News with Charlie Gibson. And at that point, they had been using a theme from, I think, the 80s. It sounded kind of dated. So I said, hey, if John Williams can do NBC, why can't I do ABC? So I digitally removed the music from it, and then I rescored the show, cut it down into those moments, slapped it on a DVD with a logo I made and ABC logo. And I had a cousin a few years younger. He was 22 or 23, wanted to get into marketing. So I said, well, if you can get me in ABC, that'd be great. So he sent the material. The creative director had to sign for it, and got a call the next day. I don't think they were supposed to accept unsolicited material, but I got a call anyway. And he referred me to another producer at ABC. And I'm thinking, okay, well, this is gonna be great. I can score like a promo or something. So I sit down, and it's the new theme for Good Morning America. And they've been working with a previous company for quite a while, and I was so anxious, I started throwing them demos within a couple days, and they took it, and that's kind of how I got that.
That's amazing.
And that's really led to most everything else.
Wow.
Yeah.
They never hit you with a copyright thing for putting the ABC logo on the DVD? My mind went there in a meeting.
No, and I couldn't find one online that was high def enough, so I actually went into Photoshop and recreated the whole logo.
Pre-music, I was a cyclist. I raced bicycles. Which is funny because you guys had that Tour de France. And
Yeah.
one of my teammates won the Tour de France.
Are you
3 times.
kidding?
Yeah, Greg
Who's that?
LeMond.
Ah,
Greg LeMond, we were on the national team together back in the
Right.
70s. So anyway, there was another cyclist at the time, and he said, you know, you play guitar and you know about electronics, you should become a recording engineer. And I said, what's that? And at the time, of course, now there's schools all over the place. At the time, there was only one school. It was called Recording Institute of America. And I lived in, you guys live here in Southern California, so you know the topography, but I was living in La Cañada. I was going to high school, and I would drive to Santa Ana 2 nights a week to go to this Recording Institute of America. And after going there, I got a degree, and I got a job at Hollywood Sound Recorders cleaning bathrooms with my degree. And you know, they were doing all kinds of the Commodores, Crusaders, some of Michael Jackson's stuff. That kind of thing was going through that studio. So I worked there for about 3 years, then I moved to Italy, made dance records in Italy, and I lived in a castle up in the mountains. Wow. That was good. And then came back, worked at a place called Ocean Way, which was at the time in the mid-'80s was starting to really become one of the top facilities in town. And then went independent again.
So one of the, I guess, sub-themes of this is collaboration, which is why we have 2 teams. Alex, do you want to speak to that or ask?
Sure, yeah, and even we can segue into this, bouncing off of an example that, Matt, you had told us earlier this week, saying that you had mixed something early on when you were starting to get into this side of the industry that you heard back later and it wasn't doing quite what you thought it would do.
Yes. Well, one of the first main themes I had done, I won't say which one, but I heard it on television and I mixed it myself. And that was a big mistake. And Yeah, right. Well, I didn't know you. This was years ago. And I had heard the premiere on TV, and I kept on hearing the music dip down kind of for no reason. And I finally realized that, well, it was, I guess, triggering the compressor, and it just sounded so uneven. I learned pretty quick, so I got a second mix and sent it over to them and fixed it. But that was quite a learning experience. Yeah.
So the lesson learned was to have someone else's ears sit between you and the finished product potentially.
Yes.
So bouncing something off of Clark, like you've been talking about how you do, really helps the process, and getting involved is
absolutely.
early on.
And along the way, if something is not working or something's sticking out, I mean, Clark will do what he can, but we have a trusting relationship. If he recommends an alternate kick drum sample or something that he feels will better match what's going on, then that's where we start swapping out actual material.
So, Clark, are you involved from the onset in terms of when Matt gets contacted to do, let's say, the new Nightline theme? Will he come to you right away?
I mean, now, at this point in our relationship, we get together earlier on. Before, sometimes he would send me something and I'd try and pseudo-master it for him to make it come together. But now we try and collaborate as early as possible, just because the sounds will change. Also, the very first iteration that goes to the network, if they fall in love with that, and then I go in and change a lot of it, they're not going to like it. Mm-hmm. It may work better, but if they have what we used to call demoitis, they're going to be, what happened to the piece of music we okayed?
Yeah, that's a very good point. I can't go back to I can't do everything myself and then have Clark mix and then go back to the client after something's been approved. It's going to sound different. They've grown to love what's been going along the way. So it's crucial for more than ever, I think, for Clark to be involved early on.
And that's why our studios are set up alike with the Adam monitors, and I have and am currently continuing to get all of his sample libraries so that I can just pull in the session and do some work on it and send him the session back.
So I was struck also in that vein last year when we visited both of your studios, which are what, 4 blocks apart?
Yeah.
4
Yeah,
blocks?
6, something like that, yeah.
Yeah. That you both use Logic, and I saw you pull up the same session in both studios. Same monitors, obviously. Similar outboard gear. Kristian, you had more.
Yeah, a little bit more. Yeah, because we record drums at my place, and yeah. And I'm a geek. I just love that stuff, so I can't stop buying.
I have more guitars.
Yeah, that's true.
There you go. That evens out.
Who has more?
And weird instruments. You have a lot of
more weird instruments. That's true.
So with those weird instruments, do you pick up a weird instrument and it turns into an idea? And does that inform, or how do you guys work together, and what's kind of the process to getting in collaborating to get to a finished thing?
Right. Well, I think in general, like we sort of have, we sort of do everything. Like, both of us, like we program beats. Both of us play guitars. Both of us sort of write lyrics, or, But then we have our strength as well. So I think that when we develop stuff, we can really sort of play ping pong and throw ideas. Sometimes, a lot of times, we work in one studio. Sometimes one stars in one studio, and the other one works on something else in the other one. So I keep saying, I think like I always feel like since we work together, those ideas just get better, because it's not just one person who loves it. It's like when one of us says it's not there yet, we keep pushing. So that's creatively, that has been super important for both of us. And then we have our strength, he's really great at mixing. I have a dip at about 8K, my hearing goes with it. So whenever the high frequency, it's like, what do you think? I'm like, do it, I don't know. I think it's, yeah. Want to add something to that?
And yeah, it's really like, whoever is the most inspired starts, And then a lot of times we have one is working, the other one is just sitting in the back doing emails, and a lot of times it's just this one opinion where you turn around and say like, do you like that? Is that good or not? And then just this one, nah, let's go to another idea. Or yeah, it's great, continue. And that makes such a big difference, you know?
Yeah, and I think we have a really good dynamic that way. You know?
So the question that comes up in these things quite often is, when's a song done? When's a song mixed? Do you guys help each other get to that point?
Yeah, but I think it's different in advertising. It's much different than in producing a record, because when you do a record, you have a lot more time usually, and then you create something for eternity. At least in my mind, you know. So you really want to be perfect. You want it to be perfect, you know. Yeah. And in advertising, stuff goes so fast, and sometimes in 1 hour you have to completely turn a piece around, and then it's really just get it done, get it out, and then a lot of times that's the final mix, and you have to live with it, you know.
Do you guys like it? Do you like the deadline thing?
I actually really like it.
You do?
I'm just better with deadlines. Yeah, it helps me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You as well, Kristian?
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, I mean it's a challenge, you know.
Positive stress.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's really like it.
Sometimes negative.
It makes it better, you know, because it sharpens your mind. You just have to get it done.
Yeah, exactly.
I love that mindset, you know.
It kind of forces creativity.
Yeah.
When you're under, and this can apply to parameters you're given. You should never look at it as, oh, I'm bound by these constraints. It's, well, how do I do something super creative and abide by the rules presented to me?
Right.
Yeah, I mean, there's, for example, there's brand identities, you know. So before we start composing for a certain brand, we look at all the other spots and we talk to the creative director, like what's the world, like what's the target group, and you know, so that way you come up with, you know, ideas about, is there going to be more electronic elements? Is it like more like sort of an older audience, or is it like very young? Or, you know, I think those are the limitations a lot of times. You sort of have to find out what that is, and then you have to play within that field, which again, I think is to me, it's always super inspiring to sort of come up with something amazing in this little world. And it helps me being creative, sort of not being able to use the whole palette, but just like, you know, this is just an acoustic guitar piece. Oh, awesome, let's figure it out. And a singer, you know. There's
a great book by Brian Eno. Whenever you're not inspired in the studio, just open up one page, and it says like, only use the instrument on the right side of the studio. You know? And it's great, it works. Or don't use cymbals recording drums, you know? And it's a little bit like the same thing. You have limitations, and you have to work within those, and that can be really exciting, and you get to different results, which is cool.
Yeah.
And again, I'm sure it forces the creativity, and those are the ones where you have the most constraints are sometimes the most creative tracks.
Yeah.
So constraints really aren't constraints sometimes.
We have such different styles up here, but nonetheless, you guys are both working with a lot of similar people in the industry on the backside of it, right? The people that are putting these together. They're putting the video together. They're putting the audio together.
Right.
There are a lot of relationships that need to be curated in that process. Sorry, let me move forward some.
Yeah.
What can you speak to in terms of maintaining relationships? How do you do that?
You know, I mean, it's kind of a complex answer, really, because I think, you know, we've been doing this for 10, 15 years now, working with agencies, directors, production companies, and it all comes down in our field a lot to relationships you build up over time. So, that just took a few years, you know. You start with one director, and then you sort of get to know a lot of other people in the field. So, with other people it might be different. There might be agents in place who do that, or managers, but I always say, I mean, that's really like something I want to put an emphasis on. It is all about, I mean, it's about making good music, being good in what you do, but then it's about relationships. So I think
and about trust.
It's about trust, yeah. Right.
It's about like taste, trust, and speaking the same language, you know. I mean, we always say it, like there's a ton of people out there that make good music, but when you do music for TV or advertising, you're a little bit of a diplomat, you're a little bit of a politician, because there's so many people involved. There's the client, the creative director, the producer, the agency, and the director. Everybody wants something different, and our job is to like combine it all, make everybody happy in the end, you know.
There's a lot of money, a lot of time pressure in there, and so that's when the trust comes into place, right? They're going to call us because they know we'll get the job done within a short amount of time, and they know what to expect. So I think that's when, you know, that's why you have to have good relationships.
Something pretty relevant, and Alex, you can speak to this as well, because Alex is still a working engineer, and something that we get asked a lot, even when people call, say, hey, I blew a tweeter, how much do I charge for my work? You know, things like that, but it's a really relevant question.
Yeah, budgets seem to be the most difficult thing to talk about, especially when you're starting out. And I think it's really important to value your work, but also understand what it takes to get to a level where you know what to charge for something. So budgetary wise, when does that conversation come in? Or when do you start talking about budgets, and then what do you actually say?
It's a complex
$1 million.
I was gonna say that.
Sorry.
Per hour.
How much do you have?
1 million.
That's where that's
What's in your pocket now?
Yeah, I mean, in general, I think it's such a fascinating topic, because music, in itself, it's not worth anything. It's like you sort of make the air vibrate, you know? It's like weird.
You can't eat it.
It doesn't really, So, but sometimes it's like $1 million, right? What you get to. So I think that's super fascinating at first, and and I think most of the music I made, I didn't get anything for it, So it was sort of to create an experience, to create relationships, to have fun or whatever. And some made a lot of money, and some make a little money, and there's a lot of music is, we still do a lot of jobs for free. In order to, because there's like director friends that work on a short or something, we're like, man, we want to support you. And then the next time we'll work on a big, commercial with that director. And obviously then at the beginning you talk about the budget, like, hey, what do you have? Like, what's the buyout? What's the territory? And you sort of do your calculation. It's a really interesting topic. Then you have your own projects, your band, you invest a lot of time and love and money, and it takes a year until you even know it might pay off, So I think in my case, I always did a lot of different projects, worked with different people, I never just did one thing, and I think that really helped me to sort of find a balance, and over time sort of build up something. But there's not an easy answer to that,
Kristian, do you have some input on that process as well?
No, it's the same thing. Like it comes back also to relationships, and you really have to judge. Sometimes you do stuff for free because you want to help people, and sometimes you charge a lot of money for music, and it's a fine line, and I think one trick is always to say if those numbers don't work, just get back to me and we see what we can do, but sometimes it's rough, Sometimes we wish we would have an agent to take that part and just be a little bit tougher, but we never.
Sometimes you have to be good cop and bad cop at the same time, and that's really the difficult part. You want to be the cool creative that connects to, the client or the agency, and then you have to say, no, but this is worth 30 grand, because it's like this, and it's sometimes you feel a little torn, but I feel like we grew into this role,
And it's fun too. I mean, that's the nice thing, that the job that we do is very diverse. You create music, but you're also a businessman. And
Right.
Yeah.
And you said when you were offered your first contract, you didn't read it, you just signed it.
Yeah, my first publishing contract.
That's not an advice.
They gave me 10,000 euro. Was it 10,000? Yeah, euros.
Deutschmarks, wasn't it?
Or marks, yeah, it was Deutschmarks, yeah, which,
back in the
and
days.
I didn't care. I really signed it. I didn't read anything. I signed it because I could pay my rent for 1 year, live in Hamburg and make music. I was like, I don't care. I mean, I give up my soul for
Was it a
that.
good deal?
Which, I mean, I wouldn't recommend, but in the end, it got me in. And if I lost a couple of grand, I mean, I don't care at this point, you know?
Right.
Like sometimes
Yeah.
you just have to do the jump into the cold water and take the chance, you know?
Right.
It's a balance, yeah.
Yep.
I agree with everything you said. It is a balance of where do I want to forge a relationship, or where do I want to help a friend out.
Right.
I think the only thing maybe I can add to that is in television, now with Netflix and Hulu and productions going very strong in that direction, you really have to think about, when making a living, you have to think about, okay, well, if this is going to air on network TV daily in a prime spot, you're going to make a good amount on the back end.
Right.
So what they give me on the front end has no relevance really, because I know that's going to happen. And so thinking about where that music will end up, and an educated guess on how much you'll make on back end could be a good advisory on what you go for on the front end. Having an agent is nice in a way, because you said good cop, bad cop. I mean, they can go in and I can concentrate on just the music, and they can they have lawyers, they deal with contracts, they deal with everything I had to deal with before, but now I do my job. And if you're ever in a position where something goes wrong, they are there to protect you. They have a team, and they're there to fight for you and do what's right, and keep rates at a decent amount.
Yeah. Clark, your work is so diverse. I'm from mixing with Maddie, doing films, doing jazz albums, doing pop albums, all of that. I mean, how do you get even in the ballpark of what you should charge?
I mean, once again, it's the same discussion. And I'll add to that, circling back to our earlier discussion, do I like this person? Do I want to work with this person? Am I going to be suffering through every hour of working with this person? My price is a little more.
That's why you charge me double.
There's that, but then there's also, I mean, there were times, I think when I was working with Michelle, that a ballet came to him and wanted to commission a piece. And we both knew, look, a ballet company, they're spending everything they can just to keep the company alive. So we both donated our time for that piece. There are other times when somebody comes to me and asks and claims poverty, but then I look at the project and I see they're spending lots of money in other aspects of the project. So then I
The video parts?
Whatever part, whatever aspect of that is. And like Maddie talked about the back end, it used to be a good discussion in the record business, but at this point, back ends on records are pretty non-existent. So that's not really something that comes into play in the record business anyway, 'cause just to recoup most jazz records especially, you're not going to wind up seeing any of that. So I try and get my fee set, because I wind up engineering and mixing the record as well as producing the record. So it usually is an all-in fee for me in a jazz type situation.
Yeah. Do you utilize management?
I do not. Management in the record end of it is a very funny thing. There was a time period when I was working on a lot of pop records. I was working with Susanna Hoffs and a bunch of stuff with David Kahn. And I had managers coming out of the woodwork wanting to manage me at that time. But at the time I felt like, wow, I've spent the last 15 years, 20 years building up all these clientele. I don't want to, if you want to take 15% of whatever you bring me, that's cool. But they wanted everything, 15% of everything.
Right.
And so I didn't sign with anyone. And then later on, all careers have ebbs and flows. Don't worry, guys, because there's going to be moments when everything is, your phone's ringing off the hook. And there's going to be other moments when things are a little slower. And when things got a little slower, I was kind of like, maybe if I had a manager, they'd be out there, shaking the trees, and nobody would return my call then.
But you mentioned management, that you don't use it at this point. Have you ever? And what was your experience?
Yeah, we tried it a few times. I mean, no, it didn't work for us. You know, I feel like, again, like for us, it comes down to personal relationships so much that it's really difficult to delegate that.
Yeah.
Yeah, we kind of like the idea of finding like a perfect partner that could do that, but so far, no.
No, I mean, we thought same thing. Like, in management would bring us new jobs, you know, and but it ended up. I mean, they ended up just writing invoices, and I don't want to like give up 15% for somebody writing an invoice.
Yeah,
you know?
I've got a program that can do that.
Yeah, exactly. so yeah, and Malte said that usually the jobs just come through meeting directors, meeting creative directors, and nobody else can do that because nobody can build up the trust and talk about music and art, and you know.
Right.
Yeah.
I think there's other people that we work with, you know, not necessarily management, but there's, you know, licensing agencies that take care of our stuff, or some publishers or managers of artists that we work with. As you know, there is other people obviously, but no, not really, not management, classic management.
Yeah. And Matt, how did you find yours? And what's your experience in that process?
So I began with Gorfain Schwartz agency about 3 years ago. It was from a recommendation of an industry person. And I've had a great experience with them. I think they have, and many agents have a good balance of you know, making sure you're out there and maintaining relationships and making new relationships. They're there to help facilitate meetings or introductions, or getting to know the producers at studios or networks. So for me it's been a great thing. I've had freedom to keep relationships going and trust going, but also help them get me into places that I would not have normally gone into.